Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the ChurchTechCast Question and Answer Show. This is a pre-recorded episode because I'm with family in Evansville, Indiana, actually. That's where my wife is from. So I thought I'd take some time on Wednesday, which is when I'm recording this, to answer some of the questions that I've found throughout the week. So I do have people in the chat room. So if there are any questions from them, I'll go ahead and answer those as well. And if you're not in the chat room, if you're watching this live, feel free to join in and ask your questions. But first, let's get to the ones that I have right now. From the Church Tech Leaders group at ctl.onthecity.com or .org, one of those. Jake Starkley asks, currently the church I work at does not have its weekly sermons on iTunes or other podcasting sites. I'm interested in doing that, and I know that I've seen a few strings on here about how to go about it technically. However, I have a few other questions. Does anyone have stats on the number of weekly downloads you have? What percentage of subscribers do you have compared to regular attendees? What are some of the ways to sell the idea to leadership besides everyone else is doing it? My hope is to do this, and I realize there is a cost, which I'm fine pitching and trying to sell. However, if anyone has any thoughts on how to not reinvent the wheel, please let me know, Jake. So I'm going to talk primarily about the third question he had here about how to sell the idea to the leadership, because I don't actually do the podcasting at my church. Someone else handles that, and I haven't checked our stats versus our attendance and stuff like that. So I can't speak to that. But as the guy who did literally write the book on podcasting in churches, I do have some insights. First off, with smartphones today, more and more people are getting those in lieu of the dumb phones of yesteryear. And so in their pockets, they basically have the ability to listen to podcasts. So if you have Stitcher, you can actually stream a podcast, or you can download it and queue it ahead of time and just listen to it anytime, anywhere you want. I don't listen to radio in the car anymore because of podcasts. I find that stuff on business, because I'm in business, stuff in tech, because I do tech, things like that that interest me that wouldn't make it onto mainstream television are easily available in podcast form. So I'm very excited to listen to those. But I think that there's quite an opportunity here for churches to step outside of podcasting the sermon into podcasting other things. So I've got an article that I'm working on right now for, I think it's the Christian Media Magazine, which will talk just about that. But let me give you a sneak peek of some of the things that you could be doing. You could potentially have your children's pastor talk about family-friendly activities in the area. Now, the temptation will be to say, and of course our children's service is very family-friendly and you should come to our church, you filthy heathen. I added the last part. You wouldn't actually say that, I don't think. If you would, don't. But that would be the temptation. But instead, I would say, why not make it brought to you by First Church Hackensack? That's my new generic church that I've just invented. First Church Hackensack. And talk about the family-friendly activities. Maybe throw in parenting tips as well. What about for people that are new to the community? They're looking for a church. What if you're the church that provides all the tips and tricks of living in your community? So I'm from Lexington, Kentucky, and we have a local college basketball team you might have heard of, the University of Kentucky Wildcats, who are very popular in this area. And so maybe some history behind the team, some stuff like that that can really inform what it's like to live in Lexington. Maybe some local points of interest, some great parks to visit, things like that that you would learn over time. But if your church could provide a podcast where it says, hey, again, provided by First Church Hackensack, here's all about our town, and then you list just some fun things to do in the town. Now, granted, you're not going to be able to tell a person, okay, here's the quickest route from your home to work, but you might say, hey, Keeneland is coming up, so you're probably going to want to avoid Man o' War towards the Versailles Road side of things during this next month. If you're new to the community, you might not know that that is a brilliant idea to avoid that intersection during October and March, for example. So you can provide tips and tricks that way. I think that you have a unique opportunity to share the message of Christ in non threatening ways to get people interested in it. So your podcast could be an introduction to your church, kind of to build brand awareness and also to establish you as someone who cares, not as someone who pickets every time that there's a funeral, for example. Yes, you know what church I'm talking about, and that church just needs to go away because they're just crazy. So that's something that you could do through your podcast, is you could build this friendliness factor. Also, if you do podcast the sermons, absolutely put those up on the website. Make sure there's a link, make sure it's playable so that people that come to your website notice that more and more people are going to visit your website before they visit your church so that they know what to expect. They can listen to what a sermon is like, and that might be very helpful. It might also be helpful in the inviting that your people do, because they can say, hey, here, go to this link and you can listen to a sermon and see if it's the kind of thing that you'd be interested in, as opposed to just saying, yeah, it's not what you'd expect, or yeah, you think you know what church is, or if you're into traditional church, then we're the one for you. Those things are kind of the elevator pitch of what your church is like, but a podcast can really be a more in-depth feeling of what it does. So I think a podcast is more of a why wouldn't you do it as opposed to why would you? Because this is the 21st century, and now more than ever, we don't have to have permission from the big media elites. We don't have to pay thousands of dollars a week to be on television on Sunday morning. We can just do it for almost nothing, and we can make quite a difference. So that's exactly what I would recommend to you, is to do that exactly. Next, Ed Hobbs asks about the background philosophy of using PowerPoint. So we are just starting out and on a budget and are working with all volunteers, and we are not very experienced. There, I said it. We will be using PowerPoint as our presentation software to a single center screen in a small, about 40 wide, 75 long, I'm guessing feet, chapel, presenting lyrics, scripture, announcements, etc. We do not have any video feeds coming from a camera like many churches, so our background on the slide will be it. Okay, that was okay. For our Christmas pageant and Christmas program, we have two schools of thought related to the slide background themes we will use. One group says select a background for a segment that best supports the subject. As an example, the Jingle Bells, it would be White Snow Scene with the sleigh and Santa, for all the slides containing the words. It would then change to a darker, stable background when we sing Away in the Manger. They feel this supports each song better. The other group says we should select one or to more general backgrounds such as a sky with clouds or a cross, and then insert appropriate images on some slides along with the words. In in all cases, the thinking is to have only a few lines of text on each slide. They think the major change in backgrounds from the first group will look choppy and will cause you to be thinking about the next background coming and not the meaning. We will begin a contemporary worship service early next year and likely face the same difference of opinion. Everyone agrees that without video, the performers or the pastors projected, our background will be very, very important to our service. Thanks for any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions. Always enjoy reading and learning from the group. Ed. Okay, Ed. First off, let's talk about fonts real quick. I would do a sans serif font like Arial or Helvetica as opposed to Times and as opposed to a script font or a grunge font. Times, depending on your resolution, some of the serifs can kind of get lost and look a little funky. And a serif font looks a little more old-fashioned than a sans serif font. So I would go with the sans serif font. Those are the fonts without the extra feet and stuff. So that's thing one. Thing two is I would make it light colored, white probably, against a darker background. Now, the darker background need not be black. It could be dark blue, it could be sky colored. I don't think that PowerPoint has yet introduced the one key feature that they should have introduced in PowerPoint 97, and that is outline text. In Photoshop, we call it a stroke, where you can put a line around the text to separate it from the background. I don't think PowerPoint has done that, so that's a little bit of a problem. There's a drop shadow, but that only helps so much. So just keep that in mind as a limitation in PowerPoint. And that limits the backgrounds you can do. Remember, your eye is attracted to light, so that's why I suggest a white text, because white text will attract your eye. The background needs not to be distracting. I think that's very important. But here's what I would do, and this is from over a decade of doing this. Started in 2000, and I've done it a lot of ways. I think the background should not be on a segment basis. I don't think it should be on a song basis. I think it should be on a service basis. Let me explain what I mean. Now, while it's okay, I think it's fine to have backgrounds per segment or per song on occasion. I want you to tie together the theme that you're trying to illustrate with the background. So the point isn't jingle bells and snow. The point is Jesus. So if it's a Christmas pageant and you happen to sing Jingle Bells or you happen to sing Jolly Old St. Nicholas, those aren't the point. The point is this is all bringing you towards the point, which is Jesus. So I would do something more generic, and I would not add extra pictures on top of that will distract. But I would kind of highlight the things that all the songs have in common, which is the Christmas message, right? So do that and have that point towards the sermon or the main point of the day. So that's what I would do when it comes to backgrounds. And the reason is you want this not to be this one song, this is the important thing about this one song, and this one song, and this is the important thing about this song, and this is the important thing about this song. It's much better to say this is the important thing about the whole. Think of it as a package. Think of it as just a present that you're wrapping up. And while there are things that seem important about a particular song, you don't necessarily want to highlight the differences between the songs unless there's a reason for that. So if you're juxtaposing, so putting things against each other in kind of opposite directions, kind of like this, then it might be perfectly fine to have a first have this song, which I guess from your perspective it would be like this. So first have this song, um, that this song is all about the dark things, the things that people are actually experiencing, the hard things in life. So, song number one, and then have a totally different background in song number two, which is about the hope of Christ. So, in that way, you could emphasize the differences between the two songs, but I wouldn't go through the trouble of emphasizing the differences in the songs if the differences don't make any difference in the message you're trying to get across, if in fact they distract from the message you're trying to get across. And I think that that's what both groups are trying to say, is they want the backgrounds to lead up to and reinforce the message. So the question is, how do you do that? And I think the point is, it depends on the song. If you're juxtaposing, then different backgrounds are fine. If you're trying to build a cohesive message, then absolutely, instead of using different backgrounds, use a background that ties them together. And I think that that will be very, very, very important. So finally, from the Christians in Business group on Google Plus, I have this question, and that is from Norman Grant. He, again, this is one of these two-part questions where I'm going to answer the second one. My question is on adding a page to my Christian website. I'm trying to add a resource page to the website that would allow users to look up whole Bible chapters, etc. So I'm going to skip forward on that, because that you really need to get a programmer to do that, unless you're going to just embed Bible Gateway or something. But from reading his question, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to have something totally different. You can do that. There are plugins for WordPress, but he didn't say he was using WordPress, and his last line in that paragraph is not the sharpest tool. So what he's saying is that he's not a programmer. And from reading through some of the answers, that's the case, that he's not a programmer, and that's fine. So don't, first off, Norman, don't down yourself for not being a programmer. We all have our talents and our abilities. So it's not that you're not the sharpest tool, it's that that's just not your gifting. And that's fine. Just recognize that that's not a trivial problem to solve. If you're using WordPress, there are plugins that you can get. Some are paid, some are free, that would add that. But if you're not, it's going to be more difficult and potentially more expensive. Secondly, he says, also, I don't know if it's because it is a Christian website and it has so much competition, but still getting little, if any, traffic from searches. That's the key point. It is almost non-existent. I pretty much get traffic mainly only when I share to Facebook and Google. Okay, so here's the point. Search engine optimization. Now that's a buzzword and it can feel a little, yeah. And that's how I used to feel about it until I realized I might not be using the words that people are searching for. So I don't think that it's entirely that you have so much competition. Although, first off, Christian website, that's pretty generic. What kind of Christian website are you? Do you have a particular bent, a particular spin, or is it everything Christian that you can think of? If it's the latter, that might be part of your problem. in the age of the internet, you need to be more specific and target not everyone, but target a smaller group of people so that you stick out. So if your Christian website is for Baptists who think that alcohol is no big deal, that would be a niche. That would be a difficult one, I admit, but it would be a niche that you could target. If it's for Christian married couples and their sex lives, there's a niche. If it's for singles who are trying to remain sexually pure even though they're dating, still a niche. If it's for parents of teenagers, a niche. So I want you to define it more narrowly than Christian website. And if you're targeting every single Christian in the world, you're right, you're going to have a hard time of it. Secondly, you need to figure out what words people are using to search for your website, although they don't know they're searching for your website, and make sure you use those words. So, what do I mean by this? When I upload a video to YouTube, I include everything I think someone might search for to find that video. So for this video, the question and answer, I'll include questions and answer. I'll include church tech, church technology, church media, church video, church multimedia, uh, Trinity Digital Media, trinitydigitalmedia.com, ChurchTechCast.com, ChurchTechCast, Paul Clifford, Paul Allen Clifford. You see how I've included all those keywords. Now, those are in the tags section of the YouTube video. And you can do something similar with your website. And that is before you write a post. And I'm assuming that you're writing the post because maybe I ought to step back and go and tell you that content drives traffic. So you need to be updating your content at least once a week. Once a day would maybe be better unless you're just not putting anything up there. You know, you're just putting up junk just to say that you've put it up. Put up good content when you do it and do that at least once a week. And that good content should be titled well because people will click on it based on the title. And it should be titled based on what people are looking for. So if people are looking for help with Christian marriages and you find out using the Google keyword tool that Christian marriage is better than holy matrimony, then you should use Christian marriage in your title and in your post. Not crazy, just use that as the term that you use, not the one that you prefer. And I know that in the church we can get all wrapped up with terminology. Well, this is interpretive movement because we don't dance. Or this is the communion wine, even though it's actually grape juice. We just don't call it grape juice because we find grape juice to be not as holy as the word wine, even though it's not wine. You know, we get all crazy with terms in the church. And I want you to get past that and get directly to what do people call it? Even if you're offended by what people call it for some petty reason, still, that's what you should use as the term because that's what people are using. So that will help you rank. Also, you need to put in guest posts on other blogs, other Christian websites, so that people hear about you other than just your Facebook friends, your fans, and stuff like that on Google Plus, etc. You have a finite audience there, but if you guest post other places, you'll get a bigger audience. So that's worth doing. And I think those are basically all the tips that I would offer you that you should be thinking about SEO, not in a spammy kind of internet marketer way, but in a, oh, that's the term that people use when they're thinking of what I call this other thing. So instead of calling it your favorite term, call it what they do. So another quick example is my second book, Tweeting Church. I used to have it subtitled Good News in Only 140 Characters. I changed the subtitle, and I need to change it on the cover as well, to something like using social media to share the gospel. No, how churches and ministries can use social media to share the gospel for outreach or something like that. So you see how, while the first one was clever, the second one includes words that people would actually search for. So if anyone's looking for the word outreach, bam, they find my book. If they're looking for social media and not just Twitter, they find my book. You see how you use terms so that people will find what you're looking for, as opposed to using terminology that you think is appropriate. Use terminology that they would use, and that will help you get found. Okay, so it looks like we have no more questions for this week. Feel free to head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact and leave your questions there, and I'll answer them in next week's show. Or there are other ways to get a hold of me, including the phone number there and my email address. Just drop me a line, paul@trinitydigitalmedia.com. This show has been sponsored in part by mychurchlive.tv. Head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/mychurchlive.tv. If you're interested in streaming, video podcasting, having a Roku channel, or